Hello, friends. Welcome to Magic, Creativity, and Life. Interesting conversations with interesting people. My name is Thorn Coyle, and I am your host. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to my Patreon supporters for paying for the recording and captioning of this series. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Magic, Creativity, and Life. My name is Thorn Coyle, and I am thrilled to introduce today Canessa Thomas. Canessa is a talented artist, photographer, published author, and poet hailing from Georgia. She is a self-taught creative with a diverse range of skills. Her debut poetry collection, The Strongest Element, Love's Survival, was released on December 2007. Canessa's artistic pursuits extend to digital art, mixed media, and photography, where she showcases her passion and creativity. Canessa, welcome. I'm really happy to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I came across your work on Instagram and I just really love it. I love your bright colors, your use of texture, the symbolism you weave into a lot of your work. And I want to talk about more of that later, but I want to start by asking what I ask everyone on the show, which is, what are your creative roots? And what forms of creative expression were you first excited about in your younger years?
My younger years, just being free to imagine and use my imagination in that you can be, and I was and still am all that I can imagine when I was younger. The neighborhood kids and I tell this story because this is where it all truly began for me, is that every Saturday morning we were super friends and we would pick a character and for that day we were that character. I was always screaming to be Isis, and our powers were always greater than portrayed on television and written in comic books. And from that, we did plays in the backyard, and we had a talent contest, and that led me into writing short stories and sharing those, and later into poetry. And I got into art, visual art, and creating with painting and digital art simply when I came to a place where I no longer felt that I could speak or even wanted to speak or write, with words. So I chose to create with painting and creating art.
Around how old were you when you started painting?
Well, in kindergarten and all of that, even before then, painting, but not really taking it seriously until after the birth of my first son, who's now 30. So
Wow.
I didn't take it really seriously until later on in life. As I became once in adulthood, I took it seriously. But actually painting and creating, even with pottery and things of that nature, that was in elementary school. I would say around about the age of 7.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. This has been my experience and the experience of a lot of creative people. I think that childhood imagination fueled our creativity, and some people, I think, never lose that, and other people need to find ways to reclaim that for themselves. But it sounds like you were steadily creative for your whole life and you just shifted mediums. Is that correct? Or did you have times when you felt less creative?
For me, in all honesty, I've always in some way or form created. That's my expression. Like I said, when I feel like I can't talk or there are words for it, I always find myself, even with crocheting, writing, I've always looked to and created in different forms, whether it was writing, painting, pottery, and as I stated earlier, crocheting, making pillows, just some form of expression. There were times in my childhood where I think I didn't feel free to actually speak or maybe speak on the things that I wanted to speak on. So I needed some kind of outlet. And I've always used that, even in as an adult. even as an adult, there are times when, maybe I'm going through something and it's, I can't find the words. So for me, in the present time, when I can't find the words or I don't actually want to speak about a thing, I put it in my artwork,
Right.
and, when I was doing more poetry, I would hide, I guess, kind of hide or just put things when you don't want to put things out there. It would be behind metaphors. And with me, I love abstract art just because it can be whatever it is for me. It doesn't have to be for you,
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing sometimes that what people can actually see. Sometimes they can see what's intended, and a lot of times they see that and more. Yeah,
Right.
and I love that.
Right. Yeah. I love your art. I love the shapes you use, the colors you use. And it's interesting to me because I tend to like non-abstract art, but the most powerful abstract art for me, I can sit in front of for hours. Like the first time I saw Clifford Still's paintings in person, I thought I could just sit and stare at this one painting for 45 minutes and be so happy, you know. And there's something, you're right, that is the artist is able to communicate just through shape and color and texture. And you seem really adept at that. And I'm wondering,
Okay.
is that something that just comes from your subconscious? Is it, of course, I'm sure it's a skill that you have trained over time with practice, but can you talk a little bit about your process, your creative practice process?
It's definitely something. As you can say subconscious, but I think it's more for me. Everything is spiritual, and so
Yes.
it's just for me. I pray before and during
Mm-hmm.
creating. I ask for guidance from
Mm-hmm.
ancestors, the force. I always ask to be guided, and to be perfectly honest, whatever is I think is intended, it always comes out, and I end up seeing
Right.
something maybe different or
Mm-hmm.
something more. And I truly believe that that's because of something greater than Canessa, something so much greater than myself. There are a lot of times I don't go in with a specific intention other than to create.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sketch or draw anything out. Most of everything that I've created outside of portraits, which I can't, I do those as well, but most of my work is in abstract. When I go in, it's just to create, and it's intuitive. It's all intuitive. So yes, it has been cultivated through the years, but I cannot, I cannot deny, and that a lot of it is just, I feel is just something that I've been led to do, and something that spirit works and moves through me.
Yes, I can see that. When I sit down to write, I always take a breath and center myself, and then I connect energetically and spiritually to whatever the project is in front of me. And it doesn't matter whether it's fiction or nonfiction, whether it's serious or playful. I need to have that energetic connection to what's in front of me before I begin writing. And when I do songwriting, that definitely just
Absolutely.
flows. Yeah, it all just flows through that connection. So, one of the things I love that you brought forward is it also feels as if you are bringing forth a lineage in your paintings, and calling upon spirit and calling upon the ancestors. And I think that's one reason why I'm so attracted to your art. There's a richness to it because of that connection and that lineage you're bringing forth. Do you feel that too?
Absolutely. I mean, art, I think we speak to others, and for me, is speaking to the collective. But for me, everything I do is about, is spiritual. It's about spirit. It's about the collective, and it's about being, I guess, increasing awareness for myself and for others. It's about bringing together, unity.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And so, in my prayer, during the process, during and before the process, is for, the thing that I think a lot of, and just in my upbringing, not my will, but your will, thine will
Mm-hmm.
be done. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that goes in that. A lot of when I say that I want and I ask for guidance from ancestors, that's what I truly do. I ask and pray for guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when I'm complete, when the art is complete, I see things that I didn't really set out, that I didn't intend, but they're there. And it was the same with my poetry. I've considered myself a vessel. I've seen, I bear witness. I think my work probably bears witness to that. And so, yes, I call upon my ancestors, and hopefully, and I think if that is seen in my work, it's because they do answer.
Yeah.
They show up.
Right. And so the work is a dialogue, it's an offering and a connection. That's really beautiful. It also strikes me, the things appearing that you didn't intend, it reminds me of the alchemical process, right? You're putting elements together, and then through that alchemical process, they transmute and transform into something new, which is beautiful.
Very much. Very much so. I say that it's not, nothing that I do is for just simply for myself, and nothing that I do is ever comes strictly from myself. There are things that I may have ideas, and most of the times it's like colors. That's it. Most of the time there are colors and just a feeling. But what comes out afterward is, like I said, is always more than I intended, or even just something just wanting to express. I'll see more than what, I'm always learning, even from my own art. So I guess that's the best way to put it. Even when I'm finished, there's always a story for me in there too that I wasn't expecting or feel, or a connection. Sometimes there are things there that how do I put it? When you speak of ancestors, and we speak of ancestral things, there are things a connection that I feel when I'm finished, even with my own work, and it's almost like a kiss or a wave, a hello, a connection that even with every work I feel a stronger connection. It's a communication. I think you mentioned that earlier. I say that it's an offering, but it is an offering for me. It is my offering, but there's also a communication in that.
Right. I think it's amazing that you talk about learning something from your own work after it's complete, because in my creative process, I'm aware of learning from the process itself, right? The process changes me. And then people's responses to that process, to the finished product, change me. But I don't know that I've ever seen it through the lens of the final product itself, of teaching me something new. That's something I would love to explore, because I don't know how many creative people take a step back and learn from not just the process, but from the finished book or painting or that feels fresh to me. So I think go ahead.
No, I was just saying that I think that's not just even in with my art, but even with poetry, writing, and even with that, I know that there was an intention, more of an intention, or more of an idea, I should say. Whereas with art, I may not have an idea. There might just be a color and a feel that, and I just want, it's just an expression that I'm guided with. And with poetry, I went in with an idea. Once everything was complete, I would always see something different. There was my story, the story that I probably intended, and there would always be another layer and another story that I would see. So that kind of runs through with my writing as well as with my visual art.
Now, what do you find the process is, or what affects you, I should say, when people see your work in person, or people respond to your work? Like, is that another part of the process? Do you learn from that? Is that another part of the offering? What is it like for you to be an artist who also shows her work in public, and who you sell your pieces to people? What's it like too to
Yes, I do.
send your pieces out into the world? they're so personal, you know?
Yes, and I think initially in the beginning, I think there was all a bit of anxiety in that you that I hoped it was well received, and then it was just the fact that when you know that someone connected, there was a connection there, you know, and a lot of times, you know, there may not be, and it's never about, you know, for someone to see exactly you know, what I saw, what I even intended. I love the fact that people can, and I think this is the best part for me, is when someone looks at my art and they see a connection to their own story. You
Yeah.
know, they see something that reminds them of something or a moment or a time or a place in their life. I was not there, but they get that feeling and that connection in that. And that to me, um, bears witness to the fact that we are all connected, but also it makes me feel more connected when someone wants to purchase my art, or someone sees it and they think that, oh, it's a great piece. It doesn't matter to me whether, okay, I thought I was doing it. To me, it looks to be an elephant, and they, you know, and they see a house,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and I love that part of it. It's not like, oh, no, it's this. No, it's whatever you see, you know, that it's whatever
Yeah.
it is to you and for you. And for me, I think that's a spiritual aspect in it, is that it's a gift that if I intended, or I saw an elephant and you saw a home, that's what you needed. So
right.
It, to me, spirit giving you and allowing for me to produce something, create something that different people would get what they needed from it. And it's going to vary from person to person. And I love that. I love when someone tells me a story that adds to my work, that adds to the work. It's like it's a weaving, you know, a big quilt. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a big quilt. And Thorn, that's the biggest blessing to me, is that
I
when
bet.
someone else comes, it's great when you see something that, you know, maybe I intended to see. That's great too, because there's always going to be something different, and then they'll see something else, or I know you meant this, and it may not have, but I'll never correct someone on that, because it's not about that.
Yeah.
I intended for it to be whatever it needed to be for you, you know.
Yes.
And I don't know what that is for everyone, but spirit does. So I look at that as also being an answered prayer, you know, is that I be guided. And if I'm guided, and we all have different needs and different desires, and at different states and levels of awareness, then whatever you get from that is a blessing to me. You know, that's a blessing to me. And I just look at it as a blessed vessel. And so that's the greatest part, is when someone can tell me a story and they see a story in it that I did not see myself.
Yes.
And it's grand and it's beautiful to them, and it's moving to them, and it's inspiring to them. That is like the best feeling ever, you know. That
Yeah.
you can't there's no amount of money that could ever give me what that gives me.
I have the biggest smile on my face listening to you. It's just delightful. And it reminds me of so many things. You know, it reminds me of being a child and staring up at the clouds, and everyone sees a different thing in the clouds, right? Someone sees a dragon, someone sees an ice cream cone, you know. And also, it reminds me of, you know, reading tea leaves or coffee grounds, right? Your art becomes a form of divination for people, right? And also the art then it's proof that the art is a living, breathing being, right? The art has its own life.
Exactly.
And we're all responding to that life, because we all establish our own relationship to that art, right? And my relationship to your art is different from your relationship. And that is also beautiful. And wow, how magical is that, right?
To me, that's magic. That's like one of the best things to me. That's magical. That's for, like you said, with the clouds, which is magic,
Yes.
which is magic. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me.
I mean, I definitely get that when people respond to my writing or my music, they often derive things from a novel or a poem or an essay or a song I've written, or even a photograph. I'm an amateur photographer, a photo I've taken that I did not know was there. And I really value that
Absolutely.
reflection, right? Because then we're in process too, right? And I know that they have their own process. I have my process. And then we have this process, this shared process together. What poet Robert Bly called the third body, right? We've created a new being in that relationship with the expression. Yeah. So another thing I wanted to ask you. Oh, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying that I agree with you so wholeheartedly about, that the third body that creates something else. The stories to me come together, whether it's in poetry, whatever you create, what someone else sees and what someone else brings to it, that's like giving birth to something else bigger.
Yes.
It increases it. It becomes more, multiplies at that point. And so I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I have to look up.
Yeah, Robert Bly. Yeah. So my other question is, sometimes in your work, it seems like you do include symbols. Is that true? Is that a conscious act?
It's true.
Yeah. So what are those? Are those magical symbols? Are they ancestral symbols? Are they personal symbols? What's your process when you decide to add symbols to a piece?
One of the symbols that I use the most when people they see circles a lot. And circles a lot. I am a lover of the moon. I feel connected to the moon. A lot of the time my work is done at night, by the moon. I have candlelight. I have, I use very little light when I create, because I have the blinds open, I have the windows open, and I try to, I just feel more of a creation at nightfall. And I use, when you see those circles, and they could be burgundy, they could be blue, not all the time are they going to be yellow, but most of the time, more often than not, it's just a symbol of the moon and my connection to it. And I guess because of the knowing, the intuitiveness of it. And so the circles are always, some form of a circle is going to be, and it's not always, sometimes it's intended and sometimes it's like just a nudge,
Yeah.
And so it's just, and I guess it would probably be there because I am asking for guidance. And I guess it's the intuitive knowing what to, what next to do, or what, the next color or shape should be. But the moon is always forever present in most of my paintings. It's the symbol. And to me, the circle is normally what I put in to symbolize the moon, the full moon. I use that a lot, and people ask me about that. And I use a lot of gold.
Yes.
I've asked, like, what is that about? Because I don't wear a lot of gold, but yet in my artwork and even in the frames and things I use in my home, there's a gold. And so, and I'm still wondering what the thing is with the gold. I have ideas, but not concrete. But the circles that I use, and a lot of times they may be gold, they may be blue, red. If it's there and it's another color, it's still the moon.
Yeah.
It's still the moon for me.
Well, and I have definitely responded to that gold in your paintings. It's really striking. And of course, in alchemy, the symbol for gold and the sun, right, are similar. So you do have some of that solar and lunar energy going, whether it's conscious or not. That's interesting. Yeah. So do you paint during all the phases of the moon? Do you mostly paint during full moon? How does that work?
I paint during all the phases of the moon. All the phases of the moon are important and needed.
Yeah.
I love the moon, no matter the phase. So yes, I paint during all the phases of the moon. And as I stated, most of my work is probably I've done. It's not like I only do nighttime, but most of the time it's at night. You know, if I look, it's most of the time, and that's not even something that is done intentionally. It's just something that I've noticed is that most of my work is done at night. I feel more connected, and there's something about, you know, just magical. I just feel more connected to everything at night,
Yeah.
at night in the moon, and
Yeah.
so yeah. Yeah. And it's funny that
I'm
you
more
mentioned
of,
that about gold, and that might be it, because I consider
yeah.
myself, I say, an alchemist. So
Yes.
so
Well, that definitely comes through. The alchemy comes through really strongly in your work. Um, do you have, so we've talked about your spiritual practice as a core part of your creative process. Do you have other daily practices you do outside of your art studio that ground your life or ground your spirit, that you'd be willing to share?
I practice yoga, which is great for me far as grounding. It's next to hiking and get, which I absolutely love. That's, to me, that's spiritual. That's the way I love to connect. And if there's anything that I'm unsure about, or I'm feeling anxious about, being outside in nature is like, it's almost like when it is. It's like when I'm creating artwork, but that's something that I do that helps me with spiritual practice. Going outside, communing with the trees, you know, grounding barefoot. I love walking barefoot. I've
Mm,
done that since a kid, but I love you know, I got away from it a bit as an adult. Oh, because you need to have on your shoes, you know, society, you need to wear. But I love walking on the ground, on moss, laid in the ground.
mm,
Earth, I love that. And it helps me stay grounded. It helps me feel connected to the whole, everyone, everything feels, I feel deeply, you know,
yeah.
walking through the trails in nature, walking through, I always explore. I'm always, fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I'm going off of the, the beaten path.
Yeah.
I, I've gotten away. I've gotten away during times when I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to call for an emergency. But
Oh my gosh.
yes, nature. Yes, I have. I have. And my dad has gotten on to me about that. He says, you're going to have to stop it. And I have gotten better about that. The last thing I want to do is be on the news for being lost
No,
in the wild. So,
no.
but going outside is to me, that's a spiritual practice for me. I practice yoga that helps me in meditation for some reason, and I don't know, but for me, and I know it might sound strange, but I burn candles. A lot of candles, and that to me is more so of an offering, that an incense. Um, I have my altar, you know,
Yeah.
and those things to me are part of that's a spiritual practice for me. You
Yeah.
know, when I light my candles, that's a spiritual practice. I mean, spiritual baths. I have spiritual baths. I say, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
things that I put in my spiritual bath. And that's just me. Protection, for peace,
Mm-hmm.
uh, cleansing, you know, and I'm glad you're asking me these questions, because a lot of people don't know. It's not something that I share often, but it's a spiritual practice, that things that I do that I think benefit everybody. I don't push it, you know. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
you have to do this. Yeah, you're free to move as your soul dictates, but that's what my soul dictates to me.
Yeah.
So I light my candles every day. There's not a day that
Yeah.
goes by that I don't light candles, and I burn my incense, and I commune. I act every day, throughout the day. There are conversations, plural, had, And people say you shouldn't talk to yourself, and I say I'm not talking to myself because I'm not.
Right.
You know, I'm not talking. I'm not. But there are conversations had all day, throughout the day, and I don't consider them conversations with with myself. And I know that how it looks to maybe to some, and that's not a big concern to me. Um, those are things that are spiritual practices that help keep me grounded, that help me to feel safe, seen, loved, guided, that help me more than anything. Something that matters to me more is to be help or service to someone else,
Exactly.
We've all had our ups and downs, and I've been through things, and the things that I've gone through, I would like that it be that alchemy transmuted to help others in some kind of way. And so the things that I do, I pray, not perfect, but none of us are. I want those things to be transmuted in some kind of way, helping others in my art. That's what, hey, that's, what I have,
Yes.
help me to help others.
Yes,
And maybe in ways
exactly.
that where I didn't seem to be seen, didn't think I was seen, heard, or struggling. And if that can be done in some kind of way, because we are all connected, whether we see it or not, we really are. And I just want
That's
to add
right.
to that.
Yeah. That reality of connection is the one thing I call a capital T truth. We're all interconnected. We're interconnected with the whole cosmos, right? So anything that reminds me of that is going to be of service to my life and help me be of service to others. And I have altars everywhere. I once had someone staying at my house who, as a guest, and they said, is there any place I can set my things that's not an altar? And I was like, yeah, here, let's get you some space, because any flat surface, becomes an altar.
Pretty much.
And that's all a reminder to me, that I want to walk through my day remembering that I'm part of this interconnected cosmos, and that connection matters, and you're right. The art I put out in the world, and I think for all artists, all creative people, we're trying to connect on some level, right? And that's the core of every art, and why stories and songs and paintings and dance and weaving and pottery and all the rest, they remind us of our humanity, but they remind us of our connected humanity. And some days I'm really clear about what that offering is. Other days I'm just setting things free into the world. And other days I feel like we're all just trying to keep each other alive, when times are really tough. Can we offer a sliver of beauty or a sliver of hope, or even just that reminder of connection you were talking about?
It's true. And I think that's something we all do in some way. And we may not, I think some of us are more conscious of it than others. But I think we're all just trying to connect. And what's the saying? We're all just walking each other home.
That's right.
We're all just walking each other home. Some of us are more aware of that than others, but we're all doing it in some form or way. And I think that even if we're not aware of the practices that we have or what we're doing, I think all of that is us trying to, to get home, to get to that place where there's safety and there's a connection, and that we're seen and that we're nurtured, and that we nurture, everything we do. Some of us are more aware of it, with your altars, and I totally get it with the flat surface. There's a flat surface, yes. I have a Rose of Jericho that's arriving soon. Art for me, and I think when seeing it, even visualizing or viewing other artworks from other artist or reading, it's even that connects me, not just to the person, but I think, and we all have that source in us, that God in us, goddess in us. And I think that's just helping, some of us are more aware of it, and it's a realization. And I think it all can speak to us in every form if we are open to it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And, openness, for me, that's part of what my spiritual practices help me with, is reminding me that I want to remain open to what's around me. I don't want to shut down even when it feels painful. And, I'm thinking of, I first heard the phrase, "we're all walking each other home," from teacher Ram Dass, who has taught his whole life, including, he had a really debilitating stroke. And he had to figure out what his practice was after that. And he had to figure out how to connect in new ways with people after that debilitating stroke. Right. So at his lowest moment, he found a way to reconnect and find what his new offering was. Right. Which turns out is not dissimilar to what he'd been offering all along, because he is still, Ram Dass is still who he is. And I find that such a beautiful teaching, as I go through my life struggles with chronic illness or, global events or whatever it is. Can we take a breath and remember we can be open to that sense of connection, and sometimes art is a comfort. Sometimes art is a temporary escape. And sometimes art, I think, speaks to the parts of heart and soul that want to grow stronger and heal and move forward. Not sure where else I'm going with that. Agree. But yeah. And I feel that in your art, definitely.
I'm glad you mentioned that. You mentioned earlier about your I have an autoimmune disease that I've struggled with since 19.
Yeah.
And leaving, there were a lot of events and a lot of struggle with that. I mentioned recently in an interview of a hospital stay where I ended up in the cardiac unit for about a week or so. And all of the pain and the confusion of that, and I was where I didn't want to speak about it. And that's how I got back into, I had been doing visual arts for a long time. I just wasn't sharing it like I was with my writing and my poetry. And I got to a place where it hurt to speak. It hurt to write. It hurt to see it on paper, the words on paper. It hurt to speak about things. And so I understand that was my place of how else do I connect? Where else do I put this? And it was, okay, I don't want to write this down. It hurts. It was a matter of hurt for me. I can use color. I can use texture. And for a while, it was a way of escape. And it began to be a way where I communicated, even in times when I didn't want to communicate. And there are a lot of times when even where I hid behind colors, where I hid behind textures. It was a way for me to tell a story without telling a story, without telling the story. It was a way of telling a story, And so I understand and I can relate to having to shift from, it was painful for me to write. It was painful to see the words, but I'm a creator. How do I create? How do I connect, still connect? And so that led me into revisiting visual art and colors. And I'm okay. I can use colors. I can use textures, and those things were used to speak for me. The texture I chose, the colors I chose to express love, curiosity, playfulness, even anger. Confusion had its color, it had its texture, and so I think us as creatives, if we're open, as you mentioned, we'll find a way to communicate, to connect. You just have to be open and don't shut down. And I think a lot of us aren't able to, even if we wanted to shut down, just because there's a call and there's a purpose and a reason. We're called to not just for ourselves, but to help others who may be in a place of hurt, who may have an autoimmune disease and can't, or in pain, and there's someone out here that says, hey, I've had I have an autoimmune disease. I understand those days of being tired or in pain, and also not for having people who don't understand that, who,
Right.
If it's not seen, a lot of us, as with God and Goddess, if it's not seen, then people don't always understand it.
Right.
Does
right.
it really exist? And
right.
so that can be very hard for, especially with people with those unseen, like myself. And I believe yours is not,
Yes.
autoimmune disease. You don't really see, but it exists. And so when you're telling people, I'm not feeling good today, or I'm not well, they look at you and you look well, you look fine. And that can be a source of pain. That can be a source of hurt, because it's like, but I'm hurting. And, nobody sees the fact that I'm hurting, and the fact that I'm still having to push through, and nobody understands that what I'm doing is, I'm hurting here. I'm pushing through. This is not something that is easy for me, but I'm fighting, I'm fighting. And there are a lot of people who suffer from these diseases and feel unseen, and maybe even feel like there isn't anything that, I don't have anything that I can offer. So I think people like yourself and even myself have been called to do the work that we do, to not just speak for ourselves, but speak for those with autoimmune diseases, and just those hurting in general, and those who are so-called whole and healthy, because all of us are really healing from something.
Really healing from
that those things and these things that we go through. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I made a commitment a while back to speak more about my issues in public, because I realized people thought, because I'm so productive, that my life is somehow easy. Right. And I'm like, I have so much privilege, and I am not going to deny that. I don't have to worry about all the prices in the grocery store. I have a roof over my head. I have white skin. I get it. But I also have my struggles. And when I realized, people sometimes didn't want to listen to me because they didn't think I had any struggles, I went, I need to be more transparent about that, And I also needed to start talking about the fact that it doesn't matter what struggle I go through, creativity is still with me, and it's part of my life. And that offering you were talking about, my Witches of Portland series, I came up with that entire series lying flat on my back on the couch because I couldn't move. I was that debilitated, right?
Yeah.
And I started writing paranormal cozy mysteries, which I never thought I would write, because the combination of everyone going through the global pandemic, and then I got a brain injury that I was having to struggle to heal from, and I couldn't go back to writing my complex fantasy books right away, right? I needed a break. I needed something fun and lighthearted. And wow, it turned out a lot of other people needed something fun and lighthearted too, and they responded really amazingly to those series that I was uncertain if anyone would even want to read. I just knew I had to create, and I wasn't sure if the connection would go beyond myself. And well, it turns out it does, right? So often what we need is also what the community ends up needing, right? Because we're always part of that community. We're part of the cosmos. Yeah. So thanks so much for being so forthright about what you're going through and how it impacts your life and your creative process, because it's important for people to hear, I think.
The realization that you had a while ago is something that I just went through, which is why in the last interview I spoke about the autoimmune disease. I would touch on it from time to time, but no one ever really knew knew about the hospital stays or, okay, she's lost, 50 pounds in a matter of a couple of weeks. No one
Right.
knew about that. And my reasoning then was that I did not want it to define me. I did not
Yes.
want it to be the source of, I just didn't want to be defined by it. I'm like, I'm more than that. I'm, I'm bigger than that. That's not just my defining thing. That's just not what defines me. But like you, I found that people thought that, okay, a lot of things that I had accomplished or that I was doing was easy, it was easy,
Yeah.
it's nothing. She must have a connect this place and she must have a connect that place. And it's like, no, at times I will admit that the autoimmune disease was a part of my pushing myself, because it's like, I got, I have to do this. I have to do something. Like you said, I have to create something. But it wasn't easy as I think a lot of people thought that it was. You mentioned lying on your back on the sofa. I spoke about how I was in the cardiac unit and completed digitally. I created a portrait, actually an abstract art called Bear, from my hospital bed, and actually loaded it to my website and shared it on social media, and kept working like that from the hospital, but no one ever knew anything about it outside of my family. And I realized that that was something that just recently realized that was something that I need to share. I just was afraid of it becoming something. I didn't want to be defined by it. And I didn't want it to be something that, I guess, it for my own self being something that look at me. This is something that I did, but it also needed to be a look at me. I realized that, it needs to be, sort of a look at me. This is what I did, because this is somebody needs to know that even, okay, you're going through this. Maybe you have an autoimmune disease like me, ulcerative colitis, and there are times when I did that on the bed. There are times when you may be sick if you have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis and you can't get out of bed. There were times I know I haven't been able to get out of bed. I couldn't walk, couldn't eat, couldn't literally eat, but I'm still here, And so that to me, that's something that I need to say, that, just needed to put out there, that you can push through, you can still create, even if it's from your bed, even if it's from the sofa, that it's not over. It's not over. You don't have to necessarily bow to it. And if you do, you can have those days. I don't want to be mistaken, or for it to be mistaken that, oh, okay, you have to do something. No, it's perfectly okay for you to lie in your bed and not do anything.
That's right.
Long
and
as
some,
you know that
some days that's truly all you can do. Yeah. So,
exactly.
For me, it's
exactly.
It's not about pushing through the way I used to do, which was more macho, that macho, forceful energy. It's about how, once again, can I connect today, and how can I connect? Right? When I had my brain injury, I had to go to physical therapy, and I could barely walk. I could barely fill out a form, So I needed extra space and time during that. But then I reached a point where I was like, I really want to be creating again. So if I can't do this complicated, multiple points of view, action, adventure, fantasy novel, what can I do? And what can I put out in the world, right? And so for me, I think one of the reasons I didn't put it out earlier is I don't want people's concern. And that's not why I'm sharing my journey, right? I don't want people's concern coming at me. I just want to be truthful about my life. And the more truthful we are about our lives, the more true our connection is. that you've been speaking of this entire conversation. Well, thank you so much.
I agree with you. I was like,
you don't want...
Oh, I was saying, I agree with you. I didn't want people's sympathy or, like, oh, poor thing or anything like that. I didn't want to, I didn't want people to feel like, that's what, oh, I didn't want people to feel sorry for me, or to be caught up in that. And so a lot of things you just said kind of helped me. I know that two years ago, I was working from that masculine. I was very much in my masculine energy, and I was pushing to a point of almost literally kind of not helping myself, actually causing a flare in my disease.
Yes.
So I totally get exactly this conversation. Just listening to you helps me to see that, once again, I'm not alone in some of the things. We're never really alone in some of the things that we go through. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Well, I usually ask people to close with what your why is, but I feel like you've talked about your purpose this entire conversation. But are there any final thoughts you want to say about creative purpose for us?
I guess know that you have one.
Yeah.
I think that there are times, I know there was a time I questioned whether or not I really had one, even, or is this the purpose? Is this exactly what I'm supposed to be doing? Just like you said, be open and follow that inner voice, that still voice. It may not be art, it may not be writing, and a lot of times it's just breathing, being. You are, your purpose may just be to exist, and just so that other people see you existing, just that hello that you give a person walking down the street, you have something in your hello, you have something in your stand up, you have something in your walk, you have something just in your stillness. We all have a purpose, and just be. Sometimes we don't have to look for a purpose. I think a lot of times our purpose finds us. So
yes,
just be.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Canessa. This was a wonderful conversation, so rich, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Thorn, for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah. So, and thanks to everyone listening today. You can connect with Canessa Thomas on Instagram at FlowBella. That's PHLO.BELLA. And her website is flowart.com. That's PHLOART.com. And as always, you can find me at thorncoyle.com. And I wish you the best of magic. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And if you would like to support this series and future podcasts, please join me at patreon.com/thorncoyle. That's THORNCOYLE. Have a creative and magical day.